Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. 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 Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined.
Welcome back. Good afternoon. My name is Cadet Drake, and I'm here with retired Lieutenant Colonel Mr. Haynes. He is our member of our staff here, and we're going to be asking him some questions today. I know Mr. Haynes pretty well, and we have a good relationship, and I like going back and forth with him at the office and talking and having a good time. So this should be a really good podcast. Probably better than me and Cadet Okada sitting here talking about stocks. But yeah, that's all we have for the welcome back message. We just want to give you a quick note. We didn't have a podcast last week, obviously, because of the storm. Our goal was to have one every week of the semester that we're here, but obviously we couldn't do that, so bear with us. Yeah, that's about it for the intro. I've introduced Mr. Haynes. If you have any words you want to introduce yourself, you can do that.
No, I mean, you pretty much said it. I've spent 27 years in the Air Force. 9 of it as an enlisted member, jet engine mechanic, and as a flight engineer, and then the rest of my career is many different facets, but mostly as a 21 Alpha. So if anybody, I know 2 people got selected to be maintenance officers. If you want to come and see me and talk, we can talk. I think you probably got one of the better AFSCs. Congratulations. So.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. Sweet. Yeah, we got a lot of experience here on both sides. So just to kick it off for the first question, I want to know, what do you think the most important thing you learned in the Air Force as an officer was? It can be about, people in general, or just something about one of your jobs, whatever or just an overall lesson as an officer.
I think there's many different facets of being an officer, and as you grow and you get into these different positions, you learn a lot more different things. I mean, when you're young, you're lieutenant to captain, you're learning your job and what you have to do and ways to meet the missions and the goals. But when you become a commander, it's all about people. And when you get into those positions, you understand the different facets and the different cultures and different things of all the people that are in your under your command. And I think being able to adapt and understand those and treat every situation different. They try to tell you when you go to command school that you have to set a standard and across the board, but you can't do that because of people, the way that people are different. So you have to understand those things and apply similar standards, but there are cases where the things are different, so you have to adjust. So I think one of the things you learn as an officer is how to deal with people.
Nice. That's a good skill to have. Definitely. All right. And then as opposed to that, what do you think you would be more focused enlisted? What did you learn more as an enlisted
The biggest thing that I learned when I was enlisted was this. I joined the Air Force because I did not want to go to school. Okay? I hated school. I was not a good student in high school. I was awful. I graduated with a 2.0, 565th out of 567. The last thing I wanted to do was go to school. So I decided I was going to join the Air Force. Well, guess what? What's the first thing they send you to? Basic training, which is what? School. After that, you go to
more school.
And then when you get to your first duty assignment, you get enrolled into OJT, on-job training. Plus, they give you CDCs, which is school. And then after you get that, they send you to FTD, which is Field Training Detachment. You're sitting in school. So really quick, I learned that your entire life is going to be spent going to school. So you better get used to it. I think the biggest thing you can take away from the enlisted side is that school is very important, especially in the military. You're going to have to go. I think understanding how to follow orders and when to question orders. You always do it first and then question after. Learning how to be a follower. I was not a very good airman when I first came in. I was a good mechanic, but I was not a good airman. It took a master sergeant to pull me under his wing and show me how to be a good airman. Keep me, I had my boots shine whenever I saw him. I had my hair cut whenever I saw him. I was tip-top. And not because I was scared of him. It was because I didn't want to disappoint him. He showed me how to do it, not told me how to do it. I wanted to emulate him. And I think that's the best way that you can be a leader, is to not be one of those persons, do as I say, it's do as I do. And he was a young master sergeant. I think he was 26, and I was 20, 19 or 20.
So you must have been able to relate with him.
He was crazy. He was crazy insane. He made chief in 13 years.
Wow.
Yep.
That's awesome.
And he got out at 20, and but he got to see me as a captain before he was out. So he was Chief Wilkins. He was awesome.
Nice. That's an experience not a lot of people have. Like having a master sergeant that's only, you said what, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, he was 5, 6 years older than me.
So wow, I can't even imagine.
And I was
so
a
you guys,
senior airman or a buck sergeant at that time.
So you're probably listening to the same kind of the same music, into the same stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's wild.
He was great.
Usually when I think of master sergeant, I think like a much older person
we had
than myself.
10 sergeants that were older. But
Yeah, for sure.
He came and ran the shop at 26 years old. He was a good dude.
Wow, that's awesome. Cool. So yeah, so it sounds like more getting squared away as an enlisted airman. I can identify with that. Obviously not enlisted, but when I first came to the DET, I wasn't as locked on. I was, everyone kind of comes in with a little bit of a, I can do this myself attitude, and some people learn sooner than others that you can't, and it took me a little bit longer, but I'm glad I did, and I definitely relate with what you're saying, for sure.
Well, I'll tell you this: you find somebody that you can relate to who is a success, and you ask them how to be successful. That's the easiest way to get something done. There's a lot of people who have too much pride who don't want to do that, but they usually end up lagging behind. Why not tap into the resource that's right there in front of you? I also had the exact opposite. I had a staff sergeant who was 20-year staff sergeant who was terrible. He was absolutely terrible. And he used to come over to the house, and it was just terrible. He ended up retiring as a staff sergeant in 20 years. He wasn't a very good mechanic. He wasn't a very good airman. And then I got the was fortunate to meet Master Sergeant Wilkins.
That's awesome. Well, shout out to Master Sergeant Wilkins. Cool. All right, and then to wrap that segment up, how do they two differ? Like, what is? I mean, you kind of already said people is officer, and then like performance, it kind of is enlisted. But how do you separate them?
It has to do with responsibility. Your areas of responsibility are different. There's no real, in my opinion, there is no real difference between a commissioned officer and an NCO, except for the commission and the level of responsibility. Your NCOs, even as a squadron commander, you're going to be working alongside NCOs that make your life either easy or very difficult. And your first sergeant is the first line. Those guys are amazing, and they're just as good at at your job than you are at your job. And it's the level. It's the level of responsibility that you have to understand. As a lieutenant, you do not outrank a chief. Now, on paper and on the rank scale, yeah, sure. But that guy has so much more knowledge than you, has so much more experience than you. If you think that you're going to go in and tell a chief master sergeant or senior master sergeant or a master sergeant how it is in the Air Force when you've been in for 2 years,
Definitely not.
Stop it.
For sure.
Don't even try it. In most cases, I'm going to tell you this, for new guys going on, you're going to find that most of your NCOs have more education than you do. A lot of them have master's degrees.
Wow.
A lot of them have doctorates.
Huh.
I had a master sergeant that was a professor at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical College, and he had a doctorate in aviation.
What?
Yeah. He was teaching my captains and my majors at their master's program.
I can't even wrap my head around that. I thought most of the time they're like boots on the ground, they really like to work on their craft as like military training and things like that. But
well, it does, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have the same education or even higher education than you do. When I first came in, I had a gen engine mechanic who had a engineering degree, an electrical engineering degree, and he came enlisted, and I asked him why he didn't work. He said that's not what he wanted to do. He wanted to work on stuff. He wanted stuff to be hands-on.
Oh, wow.
And he didn't want to manage people until later on. So, there's different choices and different things, and there's different personalities and different things for people. And what might be right for you is not right for somebody else. That's why diversity works. especially in the Air Force.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there are certain jobs that I would never want. There's certain jobs that you might never want,
Mhm.
but there's people that are willing to do those jobs and they're happy doing those.
Awesome. That's great. I think we had a great start to the podcast. That's awesome. That's a lot of wisdom we got here. So definitely take that advice and that knowledge that we got and apply that. We kind of have that dichotomy here. Like, obviously, we're all training to be officers, but, you know, if you were to draw the separation, POC are kind of more like the officer, and the, you know, more hands, you have more boots on the ground and hands-on work for the GMC. They're learning things, they're going through training, so maybe GMC and POC alike can take that information and you can apply it to your everyday life as a cadet. Nice. All right, well, I know I talk about this a lot with you, but what are some lesser-known AFSCs that you know of or that you are interested in or would recommend? We have GMC ask us all the time, like, what are some lesser-known AFSCs? Because there's quite a few that, you know, people don't really know about.
Well, like I said, I think it all depends on your personal wants and your personal interests. But special tactics is one. Combat weather, nobody's ever heard of that.
Combat weather, okay.
And then people don't realize that band. You can
Oh,
actually
yeah,
come
we
in
talked
and
about
play an
that.
instrument and be in the band. Enlisted people are mostly in the band playing the instruments, but the conductor is an officer, and so that's, you know, chaplains is another one. You know, you don't really think about chaplains, but chaplains are huge in the Air Force, especially for squadron commanders. We utilize them all the time. And one of the things that chaplains provide squadron commanders, and they provide the people that are under you, is if you go talk to a chaplain, anything that you tell that chaplain is confidential. He doesn't have to say anything about it.
We have lessons about that in our
Yep.
AS class, they
Yep.
tell you.
And I think that is a great thing. When you go see somebody else in the service, that's not necessarily true.
Mhm.
There's some HIPAA laws, but you know, there's some things that if you say something to somebody, there are things that they have to
do
report.
procedurally, right? Yeah.
Correct. And if you go talk to the chaplain, you just want to get something off the chest, he is not obligated to tell you anything. So there's some special duties as an officer that you need to look out for. Executive officer, above wing level, it's a 97 Echo.
Oh, wow.
You most of the time you don't volunteer for those jobs. You get picked for those jobs.
Gotcha.
And they'll pull you up, and it's above, at the wing or above, for 97 Echo. And aide de camps.
What is that?
General officers or flag officers are authorized. I think 3 and 4 stars are authorized a special assistant. An aide de
Oh,
camp.
okay. It's
And
okay.
he takes care of everything.
Gotcha.
He takes care of his uniform. He goes dry cleaning. He does everything for that
Hotel
general officer.
room,
Yes, everything that
scheduling.
his executive officer doesn't do.
Huh.
He even goes and cooks at the house sometimes,
Mhm.
or oversees the cook.
Mhm.
I mean, he helps the wife with planning parties and all that kind of stuff. And they wear a white rope, and you'll see them in.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I knew that was a position in the Army. I grew up in an Army family. I know that was, I think it's called something else, but yeah, that's a very, if it's the same way as the Army is, I know that it's very selective. You get like one person out of every graduating class or whatever, and it's a lesser known job. So yeah, that's really interesting. That's good to know. Okay. Well, that being said, like, why do you think people aren't aware of most of these AFSCs?
Well, it has nothing to do with being aware of it, but most of the people that we have in ROTC have never been around the military.
Mhm.
So that's one of the reasons. But I think if you do your research before everybody knows what a pilot does. Everybody knows what maintenance does. Those are the most known. But 62 acquisitions, nobody knows what that is.
Mhm.
Contracting, nobody knows really what they do. Financial management's another one. FSS officers, those are another one that just do your research. Go and find out. And the best thing you can do is go shadow somebody. If you know somebody, go spend a day with them. See what their life is like. See if you like the job.
Definitely.
If you want to go be a special operator, I'd go down to the school and start asking questions. I worked through the chain of command before I just showed up there, but if you know somebody and you can get down there and talk to somebody, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, people don't realize that, like, if you come correctly through the chain of command and politely and with customs and courtesies how you should, like, a lot of people are pretty open to, we're talking to you. We talked to you for like 10 minutes before this, and you were like, oh, hey, by the way, I know a guy who might be able to come do the podcast. Especially in leadership positions in, like, the officer world, officers are, like, a lot of time very nice and open to just, come and teach you about what they do, especially if they like it, right?
Well, and that's another thing you got to understand. Those generals that everybody's scared of, they were once lieutenants too.
For sure.
Okay, they've gone through everything. So it's not, the people that, when you're on active duty, I'm going to just tell you this, when you're on active duty, the people that you have to worry about are not the generals. The generals are usually the nicest people on the face of the planet. It's lieutenant colonels and colonels that work for those generals on the staffs that you got to worry about.
Oh, okay, I see. Huh, I never thought about it like that. Yeah, usually people are more scared of the generals and all that good stuff. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a lot of politics and things like that as you go up in the ranks. So, I mean, you probably wouldn't get too far if you're not a people person, right? And if you're not, if you don't know how to interact with people. So, that's cool. All right. So, I mean, what are specifically non-rated? That was the other question that we had for this category. Like, what are 2 or 3 non-rated AFSCs that you would recommend for cadets that are struggling to find a job? Like, I'm a 200. I'm about to go to field training. I don't want to go rated, or I can't. I don't want to do security forces. I don't want to do force support. Like, what are a couple? Like, I know you always mention to me.
Well, I will say this. Okay, security forces, there are reasons. You find out what the reasons are you don't want to be a security forces.
Okay. Not
find
just
out the reasons why you don't want to be an FS.
Don't just say I don't want to do
right.
it. Okay.
Don't just say that. Go find out.
Okay.
Maybe it's something that you really
prove
do
yourself
like.
wrong. Yeah.
Right. And I will tell you this. Usually, okay, and this is, you'll find this out. If somebody is pushing an AFSC really hard, and you don't hear about another AFSC, I would really be skeptical about that.
Okay.
Go find out what that one they're not talking about is, because that might be a hidden gem that nobody wants you to know about.
Oh, okay, got you. Yeah.
For me personally, I think 21 alphas get a bad rap. That's maintenance. Yes, they work hard. Yes, they work long hours. But there's some benefits to being in maintenance, and one of the very first ones is you will lead from day one. You will be in charge of a group of people from day one. You get to command at the major level and the lieutenant colonel level.
Okay.
A lot of the other AFSCs, you're not going to be able to do that as a major. It's going to be lieutenant colonel before you ever see squadron command.
Understood.
If, in my opinion, the job of the Air Force is to fly, fight, and win, correct? That's
Yes.
the mission. That's what we teach everybody.
Yes, sir.
If you're not flying the airplane, you might as well be fixing it, because everything else is just supporting it.
Understood.
And without airplanes, there is no job. Pilots have no job. Okay, so if you want to be the lineman on a football team and be a starting lineman on a football team, go be maintenance.
It's a very important job, and people don't realize. We've had a few maintenance officers graduate, so if you're really interested and you want to get into it, then shoot one of us a message on Slack on the PA team, and we can get you in touch with some actual commissioned officers who, when I was 100, I know we had a couple maintenance officers commissioned. So. Well,
maintenance officers also have, what weapons school is for pilots, right?
Yes.
Those guys, they're patch wearers, that's what they call them, and they're the brainiacs. They go and do, the planning, and they do, help write doctrine. They're super wicked smart.
Huh.
Okay, and if you get selected for that, you're in the top 10% at least.
Okay.
Well, the maintenance has the same thing.
Okay.
We have our own weapons school at Nellis.
Oh wow.
And if you get selected for that, it's a very difficult school. There's really, I'll just say this: if you get through that school, you deserve to wear the patch.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't even know that. What does it look like? What's a patch?
It's very similar to the patch that the pilots wear. It's
Oh,
that
wow.
gray patch.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's
Instead
cool.
of saying Air Weapons School, it says logistics, I think.
So that's like a respect thing in the maintenance world. Like you see
Yep.
that, you're like, oh, it's kind of like a Ranger tab for the Army. And
Yep.
like, whoa, like
Yep.
that guy really put in a lot of
Yeah,
work, or
and
that
then
girl
you get
really
to
put in a
go
lot
do
of
things.
work.
You get to go do things because there's special coded jobs for maintainers with those patches. So they'll get to go do joint jobs before somebody that doesn't have that.
Oh, gotcha.
Or somebody, go work a KAOC, or go work, those type of jobs in planning and into intel. So when you get that, it opens up a lot of doors.
That's awesome. Cool. Okay. Well, that was a good little discussion on AFSCs. I hope that answered y'all's questions. I know we've had someone waiting for an answer on that, and we haven't been able to get to it because we haven't had anyone with like your experience on here in regards to some non-rated AFSCs and things like that. So that's really good. But hit us up if you have more questions about that, and maybe if you have a question or you had an idea that popped up in your head. Remember, we'll send out a little Google form, and you can ask us anything. So I guess we'll get into some personal stuff. I'm in your office quite a bit, turning my flight hours in and things like that. I saw you had a plaque that says, "Don't sugarcoat it, tell me how it is." And it's one of those plaques that, correct me if I'm wrong, it's just one of those memorabilia type things that you get after you finish command or you finish a leadership position at your unit and you go somewhere else, right? So where did that come from?
I was head of QA, which is quality assurance.
Okay.
And we make sure that all the people on the flight line and in the back shops are doing their maintenance correctly. And we do inspections and spot inspections and those kind of things. And when my inspectors used to come in and they'd find stuff, I did not like to spend a lot of time discussing niceties. Just tell me what you need to tell me. Don't build the barn to tell me about the door. Let's just tell me about the door. And let's get it fixed and get done with it. So that's where, hey, look, so somebody would used to come in and say, "Hey, sir, I got some bad news." I said, "Stop sugarcoating this.
Yeah.
Just tell me what it is we need to know, and let's get down to business."
For sure.
So, yeah.
Why do you think that's important in the military? Like, that's definitely important in a lot of different jobs. Now, when it comes to PA, like our job, we're the opposite, right?
It's different. Yeah, you have to be a little bit nicer, I think, and approach things a little bit different. And when you get up into the ranks and dealing with different situations, yes. But when you're on a day-to-day basis of doing a business that if you don't do your business right, you can kill people.
Definitely.
You need to just take the approach of the worst thing a maintenance officer can do is not make a decision.
Understood.
That's the worst thing you can do. It's not making the wrong decision. I'd rather somebody make the wrong decision than no decision at all. So when they come to you, have a solution. Anybody, and I don't care what AFSC it is. If you have a problem, don't ever come to me with a problem without having a proposed solution. You should have operators and maintainers always have to have at least 3 different COAs. You know what a COA is?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So
So when you come to somebody with a problem, don't expect the answer to come from them. You give them 3 opportunities and let them evaluate. They might have something else, but it shows that at least you've looked at it before coming to them to solve your problem.
And that's huge, especially even in ROTC. If you can get in that habit, that'll help you out a lot, especially as GMC. I'm sure y'all have had multiple situations this semester as flight members or as a certain position, like say you're safety officer for your flight. If there's something that you have an idea about and you think it could be fixed or done better, there's a chance that we're just doing something away because it's worked, and that's what's worked over time. But if you think you can fix something, then heck, write up a couple codes, get a memo together, and send it up and see what you can do.
And I will say this too. The solutions never really come from the top. They always come from the bottom and they go up. A prime example is this, and it has nothing to do with rank and experience and all that other stuff sometimes. When I was in POW camp training in Washington, we had a captain who was in charge of our flight, okay? And he did not do very well. He lost it and they had to take him away because he couldn't handle it, even though it was just training. The person that stood up was a one-striper female, and she was amazing. She was absolutely amazing. And that's my point. Different personalities, different things, react to different situations differently. Utilize those talents when they arise, no matter what rank they are. Just because you have a master sergeant who's a master sergeant, maybe he shouldn't be driving the truck. Maybe he should not be the guy that's the pro super and running the flight line. If you got a very smart staff sergeant who's on the way up and you know that they can do that job, let him drive the truck.
Yeah, and that benefits everybody, right?
Let him take the responsibility and see me handle it. And so most of the time you're going to find out that they do a better job.
And that'll benefit them to give them more experience, and it'll also benefit the team. It's helping everyone else out if someone with a certain experience or skills in a certain area can show their skill, and it could even probably make people more efficient, right? Like,
Right.
you know,
But
if I'm
part-
sitting around with
part-
nothing to do, I always say I do better when I'm busy in a military environment. I like having something to do. I like having work, you know. So, and we've seen that happen, and I'm sure y'all have seen it as GMC. Like, there could be someone who's a superstar weeks 1 through 6, and then now the flight commander is like, okay, well, I'm not going to test them as much, or I'm going to focus on, you know, testing other people and giving other people opportunities, and they kind of just fade to the background. So that's definitely good, is to, I would say, keep people involved and keep everyone a part of the team.
Right.
But I had we actually have, and I'm taking a criminal justice management course right now because I'm a senior. I'm about to graduate. It's like the last course you take, and it's so funny. It's just all like leadership, and it's just all these things I've already learned in ROTC. You know, I just had to write an essay about why we should try to not necessarily move away, but why we should look at top-down management styles like in the corporate world and in criminal justice organizations, and really focus on letting the people at the bottom come up with solutions to things and be active, or at least that's what I said. You know, everything you just said is literally what I typed up. You know, so that's really cool. And I think by the end of your time here in RTC, if you are younger or if you just started the program, you'll definitely pick up on that, and you got to remember that kind of thing.
I think that's another thing that people don't understand what real leadership is. Okay, anybody can be a leader, all right, but the good leaders are the people that do the thing that's right, even though it might not be the popular answer. Okay, and when you are, prime example, let's say you have that staff sergeant that did a great job in a master sergeant position, right? And it comes time for him to leave, and you're going to write him an MSM because the position warrants an MSM, right? So you send it up, it comes back, and it's downgraded because he's a staff sergeant, not because of the job he did, but because of his rank. What do you do as his leader? Do you just go, okay, sign it, or do you fight for him?
Fight for him, for sure.
Fight for him.
Yeah.
Now, are you going to win? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you win. But the point of the matter is that you went to bat for that guy because he deserves it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And depending on how good of an argument you make and how well you write a package will determine if he gets that MSM or not. But don't just go, yeah, well, he's staff sergeant. And fine.
Yeah,
and give up.
Sadly, yeah, that happens, and I think a lot of times some people, just based on their personality as a person, sometimes it can be like, okay, like step way back. You know, there's definitely ways to, I don't want to say challenge, but like there's definitely ways to, you know, give suggestions to leadership and things like that. If you don't think something is right or someone's being done
exactly.
unfairly.
I used to tell the people when I was running the squadron, they come up to me and I said, you have one card, okay? And if you pull that card, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Which means if this is your guy and you want him to get this, I get it. But you can have this, you can't have 8 number ones.
Mm-hmm.
You can only have 1 number one.
Definitely.
So make sure when you do those things, you can't do it for everybody. But those people who rise to the top, you have to take care of them. And you can't just give up on them. You have to make sure that they get what they've earned. You're not giving them anything. You're making sure they get what they deserve.
That's a huge part of being a good leader. That's a huge part of being a good leader, for sure. Like that's even a thing. We PA team, we've been real busy with things and doing podcasts and stuff, and we try to make sure that everyone on our team gets, you know, recognition when they do things right and things of that nature, because you don't want someone to be, you know, behind the scenes. Like we have Cadet Okada. I mention him usually at least twice a podcast. He's behind the scenes, you know, in a sweatshirt and jeans right now doing his thing because he doesn't have to be on here today, but he's a huge part of it. So definitely, like, we're just recognizing people who, you know, may not be stand out all the time because of their position or their job or just their personality, and you got to definitely recognize them and make sure that, you know, they know they're important to the team. Because I know I want that as a, you know, if I had a quiet...
as an officer, you should not be worried about getting recognition for yourself.
100%. It's for your people.
That should never cross your mind.
Always for your people.
For your people and for your unit. And if your unit is doing well and your people are happy, you're a success. It doesn't matter what kind of award you get.
Definitely.
The best leaders don't care about that. They don't have an interest in it. They have the interest of the well-being of their people.
Yes.
And the mission.
And when you make it about yourself, it's usually when you screwed something up.
Well, it's not only that. The minute you make it about yourself, the people that work for you can see it.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And you just got to be able to put the good things that happen on your people under you, and you got to be able to accept it when something bad happens. It's you. You're the leader. You're in charge. So that's what I meant by make it by yourself. So you definitely got to take responsibility when things go wrong, and you don't want to be throwing people under the bus, things like that.
Yeah, but in the same breath, you have to make it balanced, because the only person that's going to take care of you
is yourself.
Your career is your career.
100%.
Right.
That's you told me that so many times. I'm talking to Mr. Haynes a lot about rated board and getting stuff done, and just next steps in your career, and y'all will do the same thing as you become 400s and you get ready to get out of here. And that's something you tell me a lot is you got to take care of yourself, and you have to make sure you give yourself opportunities, and you have to make sure that you are giving yourself all of the information about something.
Right. And and you have to make sure that you're prepared when those opportunities arise. If something requires a master's degree and you don't have one, that's not on them, that's on you.
100%. Awesome. So, all right, so continuing with the personal stuff, what else? We have some good questions here. I think some of them are coming in from the audience. I'm just checking out the document right now. What do you, have you been deployed before?
Many times.
Oh, nice. See, that's something I talk to you quite often. I haven't even really got to talk to you about any deployment. So so let's do this. So do you have a funny story, and then a cool story, serious story, things you've seen? Well, let's start off with something serious. So is there anything, so what is the most serious wow moment, or I'm in the military, this is real. What do you have?
I will tell you this. One of the things that really impressed me the most was when I was deployed in Qatar, and I was doing some work for the Pentagon, and we were collecting data, and we were interviewing a bunch of TACPs that were coming in from the field. And those guys are young. They're young, your age and younger, and they're doing some things that are hard to do. Let's just say that. Okay, and they have full bird colonels that listen to them, calling in airstrikes and doing some really magnificent things. And the attitudes and the maturity level of those kids was above reproach.
Wow.
And some of the things when they come in and they're asking me, I think it was a major at the time, and they're asking me, sir, we need some help. We need to get a platform to where we're not on the ground where we can see from the sky when we're calling in airstrikes. We need to be able to get on a helicopter. And at the time, the Air Force had a rule where you couldn't put somebody on an airplane if they weren't manifested on the aircraft. Now, the Army is different. All you had to do is have a weapon, and you could get on any Army helicopter or any Army aircraft with no problem. Didn't care. But the Air Force didn't have anything that was really low and slow.
Okay.
We have the A-10, but you can't put anybody in an A-10.
Yeah.
We have UH-60s, but we don't have many of them, and most of them are used for medevac in the Air Force anyway. So what we did was we went to AMARC, and we found some of these push-pull Cessnas from Vietnam. And they had a propeller on the back, and they have a propeller
front,
on the front,
right?
and you could put 2 people in there with the pilot.
Huh.
So we made up a proposal. We did, took all the analysis, got all the things stuff, put the package together. I went to Bahrain, sat in front of a bunch of military officers, and made my proposal to get these guys what they needed. And at the meeting, it was shot down because the airplane wasn't. It didn't meet the needs or the mission of the Air Force at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But a year later, after I was walking down in the BX and looked at the Air Force Times, sure enough, they picked them up and they put them down there because they needed them. So
that's awesome. What a story. That's really cool. All right, well then, going off that, what's something funny that you've heard or that you saw?
Something that was ridiculous.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so we're downrange, and there's a B-1 unit, and a crew chief did something that was totally inappropriate. Let's just say that.
Okay.
And they put it on Facebook. And everybody was cool with it until it hit Facebook.
Huh.
The minute somebody saw it on Facebook, General North fired everybody.
Pay attention. We have an important lesson coming here, I can sense.
Yeah. Facebook is the devil.
Social media in general, right?
Listen, there's some good things about it, but as a squadron commander, you know how I busted most of my people?
Social media?
I go look at their social media accounts.
Mm. I mean, what does that say about, you're representing the Air Force, so you got to definitely make sure.
Right, but you don't understand that even if you block me from looking at it, if somebody I know sees your
Screenshots
account,
it and sends it
I
to
can
you.
see it.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that you don't want somebody to know, you better not put it on Facebook,
100%.
or any kind of social media, or Twitter, TikTok, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
because your commanders are looking at that.
We have case studies and stuff like that all the time. We hear it all the time, and apart from a security reason, from just security, like you don't really want to put your stuff out there because we're not just your normal citizen. We're going to be training to be officers in the military. So apart from security, just setting a good image for yourself, or not even going out and trying to set a good image, but just like a lack of bad stuff is good. I mean, you don't want to get super political about stuff. We had a case study yesterday, like there's a sergeant in the unit somewhere. What do? He's on social media. He's talking about elected officials, Secretary of the Air Force, things like that. That is always a no-go. It's even harder.
You will be prosecuted
Yes.
for talking
Yes.
derogatory about the President of the United States. And you got to remember something. It has nothing to do with the man. You're going to have commanders you don't like.
100%.
You still have to respect the position of authority and the rank.
Yes.
Same goes with the President of the United States. I don't care if you like him. You respect the office, not the man.
He is our commander-in-chief
Or the woman.
after all, right? So,
Right,
yeah,
right.
for sure. So, yeah, make sure you got all your stuff on lock. Maybe some of y'all listening right now like, go clear your stuff. We want to be as low-key and secure as possible to make sure that no one's being looked at or, you can get...
Just live your life. Live your life as the best as you possibly can. If you know it's not right, then
Oh,
don't
for
do
sure.
it. Just
Definitely.
don't do it.
Definitely.
That's the point.
Definitely.
I mean, there are people. One of the things that's not fair, and I agree that it's not fair, but there are people who are married in the United States Air Force, officer and enlisted, and they're married to somebody that's not in the Air Force, and they get a separation. Well, the person that's not married to not in the military can date. You cannot, as a military member,
until you're actually the paperwork's good.
Right.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm sure everyone's seen that kind of thing.
Yes,
I've
I've had
it.
to kick people out because they've done it.
That's terrible. So that's the kind of stuff that you will just have to learn about and make sure you keep track of. And I definitely agree with that. We hear it all the time, but it's never a bad thing to just kind of, especially the younger cadets who might not understand or might not have had any military background. Like you said, we don't have a lot of people who are, come from a military background, and it is very important to, keep a low profile and all that good stuff. All right. I know you live, obviously we all live locally or close. Did that have anything to do with you coming to our detachment, or what brought you over here? What made you think, hey, I'm retired, I did, so many years enlisted, so many years officer, and now you're like, shoot, I want to kind of get back into it as much as I can.
Well, I had a friend who called me up who said that there was a detachment down in San Angelo that one of the contractors had gotten another job and it was leaving, and they needed somebody to fill it, and if I would do it for them. So I said, yeah. So I got in charge of the company that has the contract, and I did that for a while. My first semester was down there, and then when this job opened up, they asked me if I wanted to do it, so I put in an application and I got it. And yeah, I like being around cadets. I enjoy it. I think there's some things that I can offer to cadets, good and bad, and you can learn from both.
For sure.
I think that the evolution of the Air Force is ever changing, but it's cyclical. It goes in a circle, and things that you're doing right now we've already done before.
Well, what do you mean by that? Elaborate on that.
There's this, prime example. There used to be 4 different groups, okay, in the rank structure. It used to be a logistics group, it used to be ops, mission support, and med. Well, I think we're going to go back to that.
Okay.
Actually. I think that's coming back.
Okay.
And I think the reason it's going to come back is there are officers in the supply, career field, and log plans, and transportation who are left out of the mix. When my career field, when I first came in as a lieutenant, you were a 21 Alpha until you were a major. Then once you hit major, you had to go to this class, and you become a 21L, which was a logistician. And you had to do a tour as a supply, a transporter, and as a log planner in order to get that L.
Wow. Talk about
So,
well
right.
rounded. That's crazy.
The reason there's a maintenance group is a political one.
Mm.
General Jumper at the time, he was the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, and his daughter was commissioned as a 21 Alpha. So in order to give a better career path to his daughter, he created a maintenance group.
Wow. So yeah, so that's one thing that people don't realize. Like the military changes so much. Like there's procedures and organizational, or the way that we organize our groups, that like stuff changes, man. You know, like people don't. How do you say? People don't realize. Like we had Sergeant Leibold here. We had Captain People here. I was just thinking about that yesterday, and we just kind of, that's just how the military is. People move and people come and go, and if you've only been here for, or just, I've been here for 4 years, and just 4 years, man, like before that, I can't even imagine the things that I missed out on, or the way that we did certain things beforehand, and it's just interesting to me how everything changes.
I'm just going to tell you, when we worked for ops on the flight line, it worked so much better. And the reason it worked better is because we had a direct line to the ops group commander, we had a direct line to the ops group squadron commander. When you work for two different bosses, which is what happens, actually 3 or 4 different bosses, now I have to make sure that the maintenance group commander is happy. I have to make sure that my maintenance squadron commander is happy, and in the same breath I have to make sure that the ops group squadron commander and the ops group commander are happy. So I'm having to make 4 people happy in one job as the maintenance operations officer on the flight line.
And then that's probably taken away from your flight line.
It's terrible. It's difficult. It was so much easier when I only had half as many people that I had to make happy.
And that just goes straight back to what we were talking about with the essay I wrote, and with what you were telling me. You gotta. I think nothing bad ever comes from taking advice, or not advice, but taking procedural or information from the lower people who are actually the day-to-day boots on the ground, experiencing what's happening. Hey, we need to continue to ask them how they feel and what works and what doesn't work. So
right, and the biggest piece of advice I can give for people that are going on active duty this summer is if you apply the KISS principle to everything, you're going to be fine. Don't overcomplicate stuff. But then if you try to start overcomplicating things, it's not only going to make it worse for you, it's going to make it worse for the people that work for you. So try to keep it as simple and as easy as possible. I
see that a lot with some people at our detachment, like who are really good at planning things.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't consider myself a good like event planner per se, but there's some people who crush it. Like people we had camp or was it last year? What do we call it? Beast last year, like Cadet Pantai's team, and I was a part of that team for just a lower level. Let's get this little part of the thing done, and that event was awesome, and we crushed it, but we kept it simple. There wasn't anything super complicated.
And it worked.
Exactly.
It worked really well.
Exactly.
I was there. I thought it went very well. There's some things you can always improve on, but you know what? That's with everything.
There's always going to be something. There's always going to be something that someone has a problem with, or someone wants to fix.
I was deployed once. Okay, one of my deployments, I worked for a full board Colonel, Teresa Dix. She was a very hard person to work for, very difficult. But she gave me a piece of advice that I didn't understand at the time, but when I got higher up in the ranks, I understood it. She told me, she said, Steve, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be done. Okay, and I didn't understand it at the time. I thought, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Of course it has to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm from maintenance. It has to be exactly right.
Okay.
No, I understood what she was talking about. She
Gotcha.
said, you can't give everything that you're in charge of 100% of your attention. You've got to be able to balance it all, and you've got to be able to complete it all. But everything doesn't have to be perfect.
Colonel Hoffman, he says the same thing. He says, choose what rock you're going to pick up and carry down the field. You
Sure.
can't choose all your rocks. You can't
carry them all.
Exactly.
That's absolutely right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's good. Yeah, that's good advice for sure. And you can apply that as a 100.
Absolutely.
Anything, 200, 300, anything.
The biggest thing I tell my 100s is low-hanging fruit. Always do your low-hanging fruit first.
The 50-meter target.
That's right.
that's the
you know
Army.
You're going to be able to hit that one.
Okay.
So get that one done.
Awesome. All right, we got some more questions here coming in. Let's see. That's a good one. Okay, here. What's one overarching principle or piece of advice for people specifically who are about to commission?
As far as what, career wise, as far as what?
Yeah, just like nothing specific in terms of the job. Like you're about to go, something that you could apply. I mean, I know the one what you were getting at earlier with the don't. I know one that I always hear and that is very important is don't think you know more than the E5 or the staff sergeant or whoever's there.
If you're going to go on, make sure that you do the best you possibly can when you're in your tech school. Okay. Try to come out there, you don't have to be the DG, but come out there knowing what you're doing. When you get to your first assignment, if you're not a pilot, because pilots don't have many of them, but if you're not a pilot, find the senior master sergeant or the chief in that unit and stick to him like glue and learn as much
information.
Can
Got
from
you.
that unit or woman.
And then, so this goes straight into what you're saying. Correct me if you disagree, but I think attitude is huge. Like, I've personally worked on my attitude a lot over the winter break, and I came back to ROTC, and, like, I feel like it's just so much better. I try to find the positive in everything. When something doesn't go my way, I don't openly complain about it or whatever. I mean, do you think attitude has a big...
Absolutely, and if you go in and you're a sponge and you ask questions, don't dictate and try to point and do as I do, you're going to get a lot more from it, and they're going to care about you. If you are the person that thinks they know more than you, they're going to let you hang.
Gotcha.
And they're going to let you hang yourself. They're not going to do it. They're going to let you do it to yourself.
Gotcha.
If you're in a meeting, especially if you're a maintenance officer, and you feel somebody kicking you in the back of the chair,
shut up.
tell them to be quiet.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, that's good advice for sure. Don't think you know everything.
But be glad that there's somebody kicking
helping you out, right? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, knowing to stay quiet, knowing to give input, things like that. Definitely important.
And help your fellow lieutenants out. That's another thing. If you see your lieutenant is drowning, and you can help them, help them.
For sure, that should, it's, that's something that I try to help as much as I can, and I know a lot of my wingmen do, but some people might be scared to help, or might be worried, but you got to help people out. You can definitely, there's ways to go about helping people out with anything, and it's real selfish to not help your teammates out and your classmates out.
And be a member of the CGOC. That's another thing.
What's that? Elaborate.
The Company Grade Officer Council.
Okay. I know probably a lot of people on Air Force or RTC don't know what that is. Could you give us a little?
It's where all the company grade officers get together on a Friday. Usually have a beverage.
Oh, okay, like officer
and
club.
They talk about what's going on with them in their weeks, and they try to solve problems and those things. And they usually have crud tournaments and that kind of stuff too. But
nice.
It's a nice way not only to network with people, but it's a nice way to decompress for the weekend.
Nice, awesome, that's good. Like-minded people, military, super diverse. You're gonna have people from all over the place. Hang out with John from Alabama and hang out with Brittany from Washington State. That's really cool, but definitely. Okay, this kind of goes back to your talking about how you didn't want to go to school.
Yeah.
So. How did you imagine the military before you joined? So it sounds like you were like, I don't want to go to school. There's not school in the military.
I really believe that
What did
I would
you
be
think?
a jet engine mechanic the entire time I would be in the Air Force. And then once they taught me how to be a jet engine mechanic, there would be no school.
Oh, okay.
It would just be, I would be a jet engine mechanic, and that's not the case.
There's always places to go, always schools.
Yeah, for me it was NCO prep. Then after NCO prep, you have to go to NCO leadership school, and then you have to go to senior NCO leadership school. And when you're an officer, there's more of the same. You have to go to SOS, and then you have to go to Air Command and Staff College, and then you have to go to Air Corps College. It's a consistent. You're going to school consistently.
So going off that, obviously you enjoyed the military. You did it for so long, but so did it live up to your expectations, or how?
It was better than what I.
It was better than what you thought.
And what I thought was great was when I did not know how to study. Nobody ever taught me how to study.
A lot of people don't know how to study.
In school, when I was in high school, all the way through high school, nobody taught me how to study. When I got to tech school, they put us in groups, and they taught us not just the material, they taught us how to study the material. And it was an eye-opener for me.
That's awesome.
School became something different at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought, wow, I'm not supposed to memorize this book? That's at that point, that's what I was thought studying was, memorize all the material. No, they showed us how to do it, and from that day on, it was like an eye-opener. and I started enjoying school because
Yeah,
it wasn't
for sure.
it wasn't a task at that point. I was actually learning something and I was enjoying it. It was like, oh,
Exactly.
pick out the stuff I need to know, that kind of thing, and it was great. It was an eye opener, and
And what were you gonna say?
well, one of the other things is the discipline. I did not have much discipline
Mhm.
when I was growing up.
In high school and all that.
Nothing. I had long hair. I was in trouble a lot.
Mm.
And when I got into the military, it showed, and I had structure. I had places I knew I had to be. I had people relying on me, and it taught me to do those things. And
Definitely.
And I didn't really learn that until Master Sergeant Wilkins taught me that. Look, it's not about you. It's about the big picture, and it's about the people that's on your left and on your right. And when you disappoint them, you can disappoint me all you want. But if you disappoint that person on your left and that right, you should be ashamed of yourself. And when I learned that, I thrived.
And I'm sure, well, going along with the studying and school and learning, it's a lot easier to learn and study something that you enjoy and that you're
Yes.
interested in and that you do good in.
Yes.
Definitely. And I mean, obviously you found your niche and everything, so that's good. But yeah, I'm glad it worked out for you. That's good. That's something that I didn't really realize, in high school they make you learn, everywhere, all the states, you got to do math, you got to do a science class, you got to do a written class. And I don't think I ever knew anyone who liked all of it, There's people, there's math people, there's writing people. When we got my FLKT scores back, you're like, whoa, you're verbal, what? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I like talking more. So you make sure you understand like what you're good at and what you're not good at. And just because you're not good at something doesn't mean you're not gonna be good at it. You just gotta learn how to study or talk to someone who knows about it.
And
For
find
sure.
somebody who's done it and pick their brain. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Definitely. And find someone who enjoys it. Just like the same way you said, find someone who you can relate to.
Right, and if you find something that you enjoy that you're doing, you never have to work a day in your life.
That's it. We've all heard that. And I definitely have seen people who really enjoy their jobs in the military, and it's really nice to see that. And it benefits everyone around them. Cool. All right. What else do we got here? We got your deployments. Okay, what was the most, I don't want to say, not important that you felt in the military, but, what was the most patriotic? Wow, I'm really glad I did this. I'm really glad I'm doing this. I'm glad I helped this person, or I'm glad that I'm supporting our country. What was wow, that was nice moment.
That's tough. One of the things I think was when we were, I was a squadron commander at the time in Ellsworth,
Where's that at?
South Dakota.
Oh, wow.
South Dakota.
Okay.
B1 unit.
Understood.
I had just come off of being the maintenance operations officer in AMXS. I had gotten the MC rates from 0% to 54%, and there was a tasker that came down, and it was about launching some airplanes against not Saddam Hussein, but in Libya, Gaddafi.
Oh, wow.
And the original tasker had gone to Dias, and Dias had to turn it down because they didn't have any airplanes, and they were in the middle of an exercise and they didn't want to do it. So it came to us.
Huh.
And at the time, AMXS was showing that we had no airplanes. Okay? So the colonel came to me and said, see, what are we going to do about this? I want to take this, we want to do this mission. I said, you got airplanes. And he said, well, how? I said, when I was on the flight line, we had a program between me and the Pro Super where we had 2 airplanes that were ready to go every Friday because we didn't want to work weekends.
And was that something that you created? Nice. Okay.
And he goes, so we have 2 airplanes? I said, yeah, we have 2 airplanes.
So
How do you know? I said, watch. I called the Pro Super. I called the Pro Super. Says, can you bring those 2 airplanes up that we have set aside for weekend duty? He goes, yeah, they're ready. I said, okay. He says, there's your airplanes. So we launched them, and they went off and did a bombing raid.
Wow.
And came back. It's the first time that we ever launched bombers from the continental United States, stroke in Middle East, and then have them come back.
Wow. So and that was just something that you had come up, like a program, for lack of a better word, that you had
I didn't come up with it because of for that. I came up with it because my kids were tired of working every weekend.
Exactly.
So in order to do that, I was technically it was wrong because I was hip pocketing jets, keeping them away from ops so they couldn't break them during the week. But we never had to work another weekend when I was the
There you go. That's awesome, and it ended up leading to something great. So a
Yep.
first. So that's great. All right, cool. Let's see. I think we got time for one more question. Cadet Okada, you got any more from the chat? Okay, so to wrap it up, what are some landmarks of your career that you remember the most? Like, what was like, oh wow, I made it to this level, holy cow, or like,
Getting my commission first was,
Okay,
was a
that's
huge
huge.
landmark.
That's huge.
I was, it took me a long time to make staff.
okay,
And it was difficult for me to make staff.
okay,
And then I thought it was kind of crazy that it took me, as long as it did to make staff, and then 2 years I could jump that many ranks. And for me, I was a underachiever. I was an overachieving underachiever.
I get what you're saying.
If it was hard, I didn't care. I still tried it.
Huh.
And
That's
that's
good.
one of the things I think, perseverance outweighs intelligence in some cases. And I think in my case it was like that. I wasn't going to be told no.
Nice.
And I found a way to do it, and I did it.
That's good.
And when I got it, I was really proud of myself.
That's awesome. Yeah, we all know how
Because I
that
had
feels.
a lot of people telling me I couldn't.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, so that's good. That's a good message to
And then
end
being a
on.
squadron commander, getting selected for a squadron commander twice was pretty cool too.
So twice, you mean? So you got it for one job specifically, and then you did your time or whatever, and then you got picked for another job, or
Mhm.
what was that? What was the first job and second job? What
I was
it?
I was a bomber, MOS squadron commander, and
Okay.
then I was A-10's CMS commander.
And that was that was all maintenance
All
chain.
maintenance.
So you can, as a maintenance officer, you can be in charge of specific airframes.
It's the airframes that you are on at that particular base, so it doesn't matter. And that's another thing. If there's an airplane there, there's maintenance there.
Of
So
course.
there's so many different places that you can go to as a maintainer.
Oh, that's got to be almost
It's-
everywhere.
Oh yeah, it's anywhere. If there's an airplane, you can go there.
That's pretty cool. If you want to go, if you really want to travel, or you have 3 or 4 bases that you think you have to be at, obviously don't get your hopes up too much. You go wherever the Air Force needs you, but maintenance, that sounds pretty good. I didn't think about it like that. That's a job that they need everywhere,
Mhm.
That's really interesting.
And
Nice.
it's not like pilots. I mean, pilots can jump from airframe to airframe, but they usually don't. They usually stick. B1 guys usually stick to B1s. F-15 guys usually stick to 15s and 16s. Maintainers are not like that. We can go to any airframe. It's kind of difficult, especially for the enlisted guys that are actually working the airplanes, because they got to start from scratch. They got to start on CDCs again, and they got to learn that airplane.
Got to learn all the little tips and tricks
Yep.
and the things that they don't tell you and
Yep.
things like that.
Yep.
What was your favorite one to be in airframe to be in charge of?
F-16s were the most fun to work.
Why is that?
They're just easy airplanes. They don't break as hard.
Huh.
They're easier to work on. The way that their GE motors are better than Pratt & Whitney motors, even though
Huh.
I'm a Pratt & Whitney guy. But they're easier. The way that they're designed.
Oh, wow.
They have split cases. They don't have to. They're not modular. You don't have to take them apart like this way. They take apart this way. So
Huh.
you can get to the turbines and you get to the internals without having to take the entire.
Oh, I
engine
didn't even
apart
think about
this
that.
way.
So it's kind of like a normal car engine. You can take the head off and kind of get in there
it's-
instead of
it's-
taking
it's like
part
opening-
out, part
It's open
out.
up like it's this way instead of having to open it up this
Huh.
way.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. F-16s are, those are great planes. That's really
And
cool.
they have different missions depending on what airframe they're, and they're good airplane.
That's something you don't hear every day. That's really cool. That's one of
The only thing I don't like about it is if I was a pilot, I wouldn't want to fly it because it only has one engine.
That's true.
I'd rather fly
That's
an
a fair-
F-15
That's a
because
good point.
you got 2 shots.
That's a good point. Well, that's the kind of thing you don't hear every day. That's really cool to hear that wisdom and knowledge about something so cool that so many people look up to, and F-16. Holy cow. Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks for coming back to the podcast. For everyone who watched it, we had Mr. Haynes on. We know you guys wanted to hear more from cadre and staff, and stay tuned because we have some more active duty officers and other people coming in next week. So stick around for that, and we'll keep promoting it. We're going to keep improving the podcast. Thank you again to Mr. Haynes for coming out. I think we had a great conversation. It's always good to talk to you and get some of that wisdom from you.
Well, good.
And with that, we'll wrap it up.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.